So this campaign is one in which a noob DM is running for a highly experienced forever DM min-maxer. Things start off rocky straight from session 0. The player shows up with a fighter and says his name is Link. Neat, the DM says. What's his backstory? The player says, oh, he doesn't have a backstory. Well, this campaign is gonna be about just your character. He should probably have a backstory. The player says, oh, okay, fine. Link has amnesia and he woke up in an old tomb nearby about 5 minutes ago. The DM rolls his eyes a little bit, but he's ready to get on to the actual game. The DM then realizes immediately that this means that Link has almost no healing and no magic of any kind. The DM decides to give Link a magic item called a Sheikah Slate that can cast spells, kind of like a rod or staff, and then the DM makes a mini quest for session 0 where the player runs Link through a few old shrines to collect some spell scrolls to add to the slate. The quest ends up taking a while because the DM added a bunch of homebrew rules, including weapon durability and a food healing system that the player will abuse for the entirety of the campaign. It turns out that Link had proficiency with athletics and stealth as well, so they do manage to wrap up session 0 within their allotted time, and the DM rewards Link with a level up, a cool glider, and a plot hook given by an old ghost. As they wrap up the session, the player asks, "Hey DM, how many of those old shrines are there in the world?" The DM shrugs. No way to know an exact number, but probably around 100 or so. The player says, "We're doing milestone leveling, right? And I just got my first level up from completing 4 shrines, correct?" The DM nods, not realizing the trap he's walked into. The player decides immediately that over the course of this campaign he's going to find as many shrines as possible and grind them for levels. The DM promptly panics, as he realizes that he's on the hook to design probably over 100 different mini-dungeons. He spends a lot of time after the session Google searching for traps and puzzles. He finds about 24 that are actually good, and for the rest of the shrines he just kind of grabs whatever he can find. In the following sessions, the adventure really starts to get underway. Link visits Kakariko and is told about the Calamity Ganon that is threatening the world, and about the princess who is sealed away in the castle, and about the colossal constructs that Ganon has wandering around. The DM makes it clear to the player that he's free to just assault the castle whenever he thinks he's ready for it, but that for right now he's drastically underleveled for it. The player considers trying to go straight for the castle anyway, but backs off after running into the Guardians. As we established earlier, the player didn't really come up with any backstory, so the GM's just kind of making it up as they go along, and comes up with this subplot where Link can slowly regain his memories. This has its perks because it means that the GM can make the player's backstory relevant to the current story, but it doesn't end up being particularly relevant to the adventure itself. The game master keeps wanting to have these moments where he's like, "Oh, you remember something important that happened here," and the player's just like, "Yep, that's cool, but I'm going to jump off the top of that mountain and see how far I can fly with this here glider." Pretty soon, Link basically becomes invincible because he's min-maxed, and because the GM house ruled that eating food is a bonus action and didn't want to go back on the rule once he declared it. Link starts crashing through the Divine Beasts, which are puzzle-based dungeons with mini-bosses at the end of them. As he's doing this, the local rulers start interrogating him, asking him questions like, "Where's your sword?" To which Link reasonably responds, "What are you talking about? I've looted every monster I've defeated, and I have all the weapons a guy could ever want. I've got long swords, great swords, pole arms, flame tongues, frost brands, magic bows, and a +3 boomerang, and a giant leaf that lets me cast Gust of Wind at will." Thank goodness we're not using encumbrance rules for carrying capacity. Anyway, it eventually becomes clear to the player that before Link had amnesia, Link had the Master Sword, which is a +5 Holy Avenger that can cast Sunbeam at will. So being the power gamer that he is, Link starts looking around for this bad boy. After some deductive reasoning and a Mirkwood parody session, Link finds the sword only to discover, after talking to an old tree, that he needs to be at least level 13 to attune to it, because the DM didn't want him to hit such a big power spike after relatively little effort or risk. So, a session or two of grinding later, Link comes back, talks to the old tree again, snags the Master Sword, and decides he's ready to go kill Calamity Ganon. In the final session, Link storms into Hyrule Castle. The DM tries to make the game at least a little bit challenging, but Link is completely overpowered at this point. He eats Guardians for breakfast, navigates the big final castle dungeon, gets to Calamity Ganon, and absolutely kicks his butt. In fact, he kicks it so hard that the DM panics and adds a phase 2 that he didn't have time to try and balance because he was doing it so off the cuff. So the second phase, Dark Beast Ganon, can hardly even hit Link's armor class, and the fight takes about 2 minutes. So Link kills Ganon and frees the princess, and the princess casts banishment on Ganon's spirit at 9th level. The DM describes a somber but satisfying conclusive epilogue, and they close the campaign. Man, that ended up being shorter than I thought it would. Turns out Breath of the Wild has a pretty straightforward plot. Before you go though, I'm going to give a medium-length channel update. If you're not a normie on the channel, feel free to click off, but if you're a regular, well then congratulations on your excellent taste in YouTube content. But anyway, here's what's happening. And from most people's point of view, this is probably bad news, but some might like the change, so here goes. First of all, I'm going to be making a little bit less content moving forward, as you may have already noticed. I still want to upload semi-regularly, but the weekly uploads that I tried to do for the past half year is not something that I can really do sustainably. Because quite frankly, it's an enormous amount of work for just a hobby, and a lot of my free time is pre-allotted to other things. I'm running a D&D campaign for a handful of college students, and I'm trying to find the time and energy to develop a small game with a co-conspirator of mine. Those take up a lot of my free time, so I just have less time and energy to work on the channel than I'm used to. I'm not quitting, but I am scaling back a little bit. The second thing I have to say is that I am running out of Zelda-related videos that I actually want to make. Some people may call this burnout, some may call it being uninspired, but I don't think that's the case because it implies that it's something that there's a solution to. I think that what's happened is just that I've said most of what I want to say about The Legend of Zelda. I've made my contributions to the theory crafting, and I've stated my opinions on various aspects of the game's storytelling and gameplay, and I've made some goofy side content like this right here. When it comes to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, there's not much more for me to say that hasn't already been said at some point by someone else. There was a time at which I figured that after I ran out of stuff to say, I could just mine the older Zelda games for content, since I haven't played as much of those. But since then, I've tried out 3 different Zelda games and really only enjoyed one of them, that being Oracle of Seasons, and even that one I didn't end up finishing. I love the lore of the Zelda series, but there's only a handful of the games themselves that I actually like. So suddenly I just have a lot less to talk about that's actually Zelda related. I'm not saying that I'm done with Zelda content. I think it will always be a part of this channel since future titles will come out eventually, and there's a Zelda movie in the works, and at some point I'll probably give Skyward Sword a try, and hopefully someday Wind Waker and Twilight Princess will get ported over to Switch and I can try those out. But it's not like Zelda games are the only games I play, and at the end of the day I want to be able to talk about what I want to be able to talk about on this channel. So you may start seeing videos about other games at some point in the future. I know that's bad for the channel, you don't have to tell me that, but this is a hobby for me, not a business venture. Anyway, I guess then the big question is what other games will be covered on the channel? The main thing that comes to mind is that there's a number of indie games currently in development that I'll definitely feature on the channel once they release, because I'll be playing them anyway and it'll be something fresh and new. Titles that are coming to mind as things that will hopefully be out in the next year will be Crowsworn and Stormgate and Silksong. And if Dwarf Fortress ever gets support on Mac, then probably I'll feature that at some point on the channel as well. Apart from that, I don't know. We'll see what inspires me to make videos in the coming months. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Peace out.